Hello, movie nerds, and welcome back to Cinematic Sarcastic, a podcast that talks all things movies and television. I'm Natalie, and I'm your host. On today's episode, we are going to talk about Knock at the Cabin. This is the new M. Night Shyamalan thriller. I am using thriller in air quotes, starring Dave Bautista, Jonathan Groff, Ben Aldrich, and a few others. This is a smaller cast film, kind of similar to like The Whale, where there are just not very many characters going on. Pretty much everybody that you've seen in the trailer is present in the film, and that's about it. Now, this movie for me, well, before we even jump into it, let's just say this review is probably going to be filled with spoilers. So if you are interested in seeing this film, I would go do that. I would come back to this, but I watched it so you don't have to. You're welcome. Now, I would have to say that Knock at the Cabin, unfortunately, has come full circle into just showing me that M. Night Shyamalan is no longer a good filmmaker. I know that he did Signs, he did, The Sixth Sense. I am in the minority of people that really enjoyed The Village and Lady in the Water, and I think that's pretty much where his career kind of stops for me. The one where the plants make everyone kill themselves and like Old, I think were pretty terrible, and this one, equally to me, is just not good. Like, I don't even know how to explain it, because this is one of those movies where I just feel like so many of the elements didn't make sense or were done in such a way that it just wasn't entertaining. And I will try and explain that. I am not familiar with the book. So for anyone who has seen the book, you will have to let me know if this was on par with, how the book was or not. I have heard that they changed the ending, but I can't really speak to that because, again, I have not read the book. I was pretty surprised, honestly, when kind of researching before doing this episode, was surprised to hear that this book is not an older book. Like, for some reason, watching the movie, I was thinking that the book would have been like an older publication, but it came out in 2018, so that was kind of shocking to me. I do know that in the book, it is a gay couple. They have an adopted daughter. That is all the same in the film. It is Eric and Andrew, played by Jonathan Groff and Ben Aldrich, and they are on what I assume is a vacation with their adopted daughter. I found it really kind of, I don't know if ironic is the right word for it, but this movie, at least, and I don't know if the book is similar, but the movie was very like biblical, like biblically leaning. Like, the entire story really kind of centers around these strangers that come to the cabin being the four horsemen of the apocalypse, or the modern day equivalent of such. It's very, like, the themes are very religious, in my opinion. So the couple being a gay couple just felt kind of out of place. I don't know, unless that was the intention, that it's kind of this dichotomy between, radical religious people and a gay couple that potentially would not have been so. Like, they would have been more like logically oriented as opposed to religiously oriented. But really, none of these characters were particularly interesting. Like, there wasn't anything, and there were a few flashbacks with the couple that you got to see kind of their life before all of this, sort of how they met, how they got their daughter, and that sort of thing. But they were very short flashbacks. I mean, the movie in and of itself is only an hour and 40 minutes, I think. So it's not long. It's not going to be like James Cameron's Avatar. You're not sitting there for 3 hours. And I almost feel like that kind of hurt this movie more than helped this movie, because you don't really have any connection to any of the characters whatsoever. So the thriller aspect of it is kind of immediately taken away by the fact that you don't really care about any of these people. Like, and another part of it that really just hinders this film is that it is incredibly slow. For a thriller, I have never like felt myself aging more in a film. Now, I ran into a old friend of mine at the movie theater, and if it wasn't for the fact that I wanted to kind of meet up and chat with him a little bit after the film was over, I probably would have walked out of this one and gone home and like saved myself the trouble of sitting through the whole thing. And that says a lot for the fact that the movie is not particularly long. Like halfway through the film, I was like, just somebody kill somebody. I want to go home. Like, I don't care. Like, it's just not very interesting. And the thing about this that I feel like just made it a little bit more wonky, I guess, is that they kind of go through this whole scenario of, you know, Dave Bautista obviously is kind of the leader. His character's name is Leonard. I can't remember off the top of my head which apocalyptic four horseman dude he was supposed to be, but he kind of had, you know, they go on and they drone on and on about how he continuously checks his watch and all of these things that are happening, like these bad things that are occurring in the world, they're all like things that have already happened. For instance, I think the first time that they are given this choice, like there's four horsemen. So they are offered this question of, you have to pick someone in your family, i.e. one of the dads or the little girl has to die in order to save the world. And if they say no, which anyone would, one of the apocalyptic horsemen takes their own life, like they kill themselves and or are killed by the other members. And then this is supposedly unleashing this plague upon the world, right? But every single one of them, except for one, I want to say there is only one of them that is dissimilar, but every single one of them is a thing that has already taken place. For instance, when they first get to the cabin and they offer this choice and they turn on the television and show them kind of the repercussions of not doing it, it's something that happened 4 hours earlier. So logically, you're like, well, that's already occurred. What does that have to do with me? And pretty much every event, except for, I think, the planes falling out of the sky, is something that happens prior to. It's pre-recorded. And they stress that over and over and over. And then the planes falling out of the sky, you know, is something that is happening kind of at the moment, which sways them into doing this thing. But then at the end of the movie, when they're talking about everything, there is this news clip where the lady comes on and says that it has been stopped for 2 hours. Like 2 hours ago, the planes landed safely. There were no deaths happening from this illness. Like everything was already done. So it kind of leads me to feel like it was all bullshit. And I don't know if that was the point, but like you've kind of gone through this thing where everybody pretty much dies for no reason. And I don't know. Again, I am not familiar with the book, but to me, let's say, you know, the four horsemen of the apocalypse are real. They exist. They are coming to this cabin in the middle of nowhere to tell these people that you have to sacrifice one of you in order, you know, to stop the end of the world. Wouldn't you suspect that if you wanted someone to believe you in modern times, you wouldn't come like armed to the teeth and aggressive? Like, I mean, for me, I would show up and I would knock on the door and I would be like, hey, so this is what's going on. You know, you choose. Okay, have a nice one. And just wait for the bad things to, you know, like maybe show them on the TV and stuff. But I mean, they come with like these weapons that are very medieval, you know, there's like this weird hammer pickaxe and like this weird thing with some sort of, you know, chainy club at the end. And they're telling you, you know, oh, we're not going to kill you. We're not going to kill you. You have to choose to kill someone yourself. Like you have to actually do the thing. It has to be a total sacrifice. But if you try and get away, we absolutely will maim you and hurt you and potentially injure you enough that you will die. But, you know, choice is yours. It's up to you. Like, it just doesn't really make that much sense, you know? And some of the things just like immediately kind of took you out of the thriller bits of it. It is M. Night Shyamalan. I don't know if this was a him choice or the cinematographer choice, but the majority, well, maybe not even the majority, maybe all of them, you never really get to see any of the gore or the, you know, deaths or whatever, like when they're taking their own lives. You don't see it. It's implied that it's a horrible thing, but you never, like, it's never on camera. So it kind of is like, in combination with the movie itself being particularly slow, you're not getting any of that like visual terror either. So it kind of just makes it to where you're like, gosh, will somebody just kill somebody? Like, I want this movie to be over. Like, just pick someone already. Like, that's kind of how I felt the majority of the way through it. Like, how many of these do we have? All 4? Okay. Like, it just sort of seems like it was really long, even though the movie only has an hour and 40-minute runtime. Like, it just seems excruciatingly slow for them to kind of get to the point. And then it didn't really seem like the point that they were trying to make was really, like, it really happened. Like, I don't know how to explain it. It's very difficult to explain, but it just sort of seems like a bunch of lunatics showed up at a cabin and said, hey, this is the thing. I mean, I'm not saying that the real life, you know, planes are going to fall out of the sky or anything like that. One seemed tragic and stuff, but I don't know. Like, there wasn't anything particularly that happened that made me think like, oh yeah, these are scary things. That is the end, you know, like, there was an illness that was happening that sort of reminded me a bit of the COVID. And then there was like some flooding and stuff from the storm that they were in, but that happens in real life, non-apocalyptic. The airplanes falling out of the sky was really the only thing that I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense, apocalyptic. Like, that potentially would sway someone into believing you. But other than that, there wasn't really. And all of this felt like a little bit overacted. And again, because it's such a short runtime, you get a very short snippet of each of these characters. Like, they kind of introduce themselves and give you very little details about who they are, but you never learn that much about them beyond that. So it's difficult to make a connection to any of the characters where you care about the outcome of what happens to them. So for me, it just is not, it's not a win. You know, like, if you are not attaching me to the characters that I am watching on the screen, I'm not really going to care about what decision they make. Like, it wasn't suspenseful or tense or anything like that. To me, it was just like, can we hurry this along? You know, and that sounds terrible because I know really at the end of the day, they're choosing to kill someone. But really, it was just like, I don't care. I don't like any of you. I'm not particularly connected to any of you. Like, I just want the movie to be over, and that should not ever be something that you're, I don't know. I've seen way better thrillers and way better movies. This was just not a very good win for me. And it's sort of surprising to me because I know that there have been, I've seen a couple of articles that have come out about Dave Bautista talking about how he's so much a superior actor to The Rock. And I wonder if after this movie coming out, he will eat crow a little. Not that he did a bad job, but the movie itself, like, I didn't think that he did a particularly great job. Like, there wasn't one particular person that I felt like was a standout above anyone else. Like, they were all pretty evenly keeled in how they, you know, it seemed like overly dramatic for what you were actually seeing. You know, it's like everyone was having a panic attack, but you as the audience had no idea why that would be the case. I don't know. It's very hard to explain. But at least from the ratings so far, it seems like this one is pretty evenly keeled between people that really enjoyed it and people that really, really hated it. And I am kind of leaning more in the camp of I really just hated this. I don't know what I was expecting from it, but I don't know. Cabin in the Woods. That's what I was expecting from it. Cabin in the Woods, you know, with all of the like sort of thrillery tropes, the unicorn that got stabby. I was expecting something a little bit like that. You know, the story for that was incredible. I was not expecting any of what was happening in that movie, and I loved it. And I guess I was expecting this because the name is Cabin. I don't know what joint thought I was thinking there, but I was expecting this to be something kind of like that. And it was not. This definitely fell in the camp of like the grass is making people kill themselves. Like that M. Night Shyamalan movie, The Happening, is that what it's called? It kind of fell in that camp for me where I'm like, oh, this doesn't really make very much sense. And I don't care. It sounds bad, but this just overall was not a win for me. So those are my thoughts about Knock at the Cabin. You please let me know what you thought of it if you've seen it. Subscribe to join the Movie Nerd family. You can follow me on Instagram at Cinematic Sarcastic Podcast, and I hope to see you in the next episode.